This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from?
And by the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation. As a nonprofit, we rely on support from listeners like you. If you like what you hear, please consider a donation. To learn more and make a gift, visit us at www.gosuperior.org.
Welcome to the Lake Superior Podcast. I'm Walt Lindelof.
And I'm Frida Wara. We are made stronger by story, and there's no better source than the continent's largest body of fresh water, Lake Superior.
So join us as we highlight the 5 national parks that ring this greatest of the Great Lakes, meet the people, tour the places, and learn about the projects that make these parks and body of water so remarkable.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
I'm Walt Lindelof.
And I'm Frida Wara.
Welcome once again to the Lake Superior Podcast. Today, Frida, interesting because we have a conversation about something very common in the Great Lakes region, common in where we are based out of Marquette, Michigan in the Upper Peninsula, but it's all around the region, and it's biking, and you've lined up somebody for us here to talk about that's got some interesting perspectives. What we got going on here today?
You know, I got my bike on the back of the car right now because, this area, we can have a really good time.
Oh, you've been waiting to say that.
I know. Can you tell? And I'm not someone that does the Crusher and some of those really tough races, but I have never missed an Ore to Shore. And we're coming on, I don't know, like 25 plus years now.
And the Ore to Shore, for those that don't know with it, it's a pretty long race. I mean, this is
not for me.
Not for you.
I shouldn't say it that way, Walt. I do the short one. Because I tried to maybe do the hard rock once, and I couldn't even train for it. I mean, I couldn't even make it from Ishpeming to Ishpeming, so it was pretty crazy, right? But anyway, the whole point is that there is nothing as much fun as getting on your bike. Last night I was at the South Trails and I was following my scout, Joy Lindbergh. She's just amazing. And when we finished, we had smiles as wide as Nebraska. And we were like, I think I'm 12 again. Now, when I do the math, that's a really long time ago for me. But there's just something about being on a bike. And so I went searching and I found Josh Rizzo. And if anybody loves being on a bike as much as me or as much as some of the other riders around here, I think it's Josh.
Josh Rizzo joins us now. He's founder of thenorth.com. He rings in with us from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Hello, Josh. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, and thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about bikes and the woods and the lakes and the Great Lake.
Well, let's talk about this a little bit. You have a passion for biking. Explain it a little bit for our listeners. Share where it came from.
Sure. I have been a lifelong cyclist. My earliest memories in life were on a bike. My dad took me and my sisters riding all the time. We would ride on the Chippewa River State Trail. I'm in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and we would ride those trails all over town, across the bridges, always close to the water. And ever since then, cycling has just always been a part of my life.
What is it that connects with you?
Yeah, I really love the freedom that comes with cycling. I love to explore. I think it's a great way to connect with people. I ride with my friends all the time. Our family is always doing bike adventures. So I think it hits on a lot of things I love with the community, the outdoors, and discovering new places in a way that keeps me really active.
Oh, I love that. I just love that. He's speaking my language here, Walt, But Josh, really, lots of cyclists know about Moab, Utah, and Fruita, Colorado, and Bend, Oregon, and even Bentonville, Arkansas. I remember when somebody said, I'm going to Arkansas to ride my bike, I'm thinking, are you going to melt? But then when I went there, I noticed there's lots of big trees, but I also went a little bit in the fall, so it was a little cooler. Let's go back. What makes this Lake Superior region such a good two-wheel trip?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I'm going to take just a half a step backwards because one thing I want to emphasize with the site that I run, thenorth.com, we do focus specifically on this Lake Superior area. We cover Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Upper Peninsula, so it's all centered around the Northwoods and a lot around Lake Superior. And I think what makes it a great place for cycling and why I love it, I think there's a couple reasons. I love the towns. There's so many great towns that line Lake Superior. You can go up 61 in the North Shore of Minnesota, and you have great places to visit, like Grand Marais, riding around Lutsen, and then there's two harbors in Duluth. In Wisconsin, some really nice towns with Cornucopia and Bayfield, and then in the Upper Peninsula you have Marquette, Copper Harbor, which I haven't been to, but really great towns to visit with rich culture, connectivity to a lot of different types of cycling, and then all the waterways. There's Lake Superior itself, the big lake, and the views and everything that brings, but there's just so much water everywhere. We have a lot of bikepacking routes on our website, I think like 17 bikepacking routes, and they are all centered around the water that is all throughout our states. So if you're camping, if you're biking, you're always close to water, camping on water, going through great small towns, great views of Lake Superior and many other lakes. And so you have all those, and then the type of cycling we do, especially around the north.com, is unpaved cycling, so gravel biking and mountain biking. So tons of great gravel routes as you're up into the Northwoods. A lot of really kind of undeveloped areas, quieter roads, long stretches of interconnected gravel segments, and a lot of places to mountain bike as well. So really there's a lot of pieces to it, but I love where we live. I do not get sick of exploring it. I always have places on my list I want to go check out, and I just think there's a lot of awesome opportunity for it.
As you look back on those first bike trips that you took when you were a kid, was there something in where you were doing that kind of triggered something or taught you something or showed you something that has been maintained now through your years of riding?
Yeah, I think the intergenerational piece, my dad loved cycling and loved doing it as a family, bringing us kids along. And I remember just stopping at quiet campgrounds to camp or just to bike through and visit, get some water. So I have a lot of great memories of camping, riding, and just having those simple adventures together as a family. And one quote that has always stuck with me, and I bring that quote with me even with the North, is Edmund Hillary was the first person to reach the summit of Mount Everest, and he said, I have found that long expeditions are rarely as much fun as short ones. So somebody who has done one of the biggest adventures in the world said, these are great, but it's the small adventures that are so meaningful and so rich. And I love doing those now with my family, being taken along on those with my dad when I was little, and then helping connect people to those types of adventures all over the Northwoods with thenorth.com.
Oh, Josh, that so resonates with me. I was just chatting with a good friend of mine. He lives in Gaylord, Michigan, but also has a home here in Marquette. And his pa, Doug Hervela, rode the Orta Shore with me. I mean, not with me. I was always trying to chase this guy because he always had a polka dot jersey on. And can I catch Doug Hervela? I think he probably was 20 years my senior, and I was always trying to catch him. And he was just fabulous. I think he did the Order Shore for probably about 15 years. We lost him 2 years ago, and Jeff brought his ashes and actually brought them to the Order Shore and made sure that part of his dad was left on that trail. So when you talk about the intergenerational experiences, but I need to take a step back because I took my kids on bike trips, but they were like 10. You've taken babies on bike trips? You got to tell us about this.
Yeah, we have done a lot of family bike trips, and it started before we had kids. I was always a fan of a website, an organization called Adventure Cycling Association, and they did something every year called National Bike Travel Weekend, always the first weekend in June. I don't even know if they still do it anymore, but we started doing it at least 10 years ago, and I think we've done it every year since. So we did a couple before kids. And then with kids, we've continued to do bike overnighters. We do something every year. So we'll bike to a local pizza farm and have supper and then camp out there. When our son was 10 months old, we did a 4-day bike trip around Bayfield Peninsula and Madeline Island, and it was slow, it was heavy, it was not restful when we got to camp because we had a 10-month-old who was just learning to walk and wanted to bounce all over everything. But it's fun to do together and then invest in your kids, possibly loving the things that you love and getting to do those things together as they get older.
But at 10 months old, they don't really remember quite so much. And you shared with me a little bit about this. And the only reason I want you to tell the whole story there is because there's a lot of folks, I think, listening who are going, no way can I ever. First of all, I think if I told my husband we were going to do this with a 10-month-old, he'd probably say, are you nuts? And then, or vice versa, however that goes. So please tell us like the rest of the story about that one.
Yeah, it's funny to look back on because now it seems like a whole lot of work bringing a 10-month-old. But, we wanted to start those patterns early on in life and not let this stage of life keep us from doing what we love. But we're just going to bring this child along with us and make it work. But, it was hard. We had some crazy weather. The very first day we were riding in pouring rain, and the forecast was more pouring rain all day long. All day without a break. So we're completely soaked. We're pulling a burley trailer with a kid in it, knowing that as soon as we get to our campsite at noon, it's going to be 10 more hours of rain, and we're going to be in this tent with a toddler, and it's going to be kind of awful. So we're biking in the rain. I'm dreading getting to camp and being stuck in a wet tent all day long. And we were driving through Cornucopia, and we said, let's just check to see if there's any indoor place we could possibly stay. So there's a bed and breakfast there, and a gal greeted us, and she said, yes, we have a room here. You can stay. And we were relieved. Oh, my goodness, we can stay inside. Thank you. I will pay anything to not be in a wet tent all day. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, and I said, oh, by the way, ma'am, we have a 10-month-old. Is that okay if we stay here with the 10-month-old? And she said, no, I'm so sorry. This is adults only as a bed and breakfast, which makes complete sense, but it absolutely deflated us. And she called one other spot that had some cabins, and they were full. And so we just hung our heads down, and we were going to head to our campsite and be wet all day. And as we're biking away, she said, the cabin across the resort or the cabins across the way just had a cancellation. Huh. If you guys want to stay there, there's one spot to stay tonight if you'd like. And then we went back to being elated and got to stay inside warm and dry. And, part of you wants to tough it out and have the rugged experience. and part of you just wants to actually have fun. And I was very glad to sleep indoors that night.
Yeah, and of course, somewhere in there, you're going to draw the personal line and say, okay, if we don't really have to do this. We're talking with Josh Rizzo today here on the Lake Superior podcast. He is joining us from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. He's founder of thenorth.com. Let's talk about that, Josh, thenorth.com. First of all, a bit of a unique bit of spelling with it, but tell us about it. What is it? How did you start it? What's it all about?
Yeah, thenorth.com is the home of gravel biking, mountain biking, bikepacking, and fat biking in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and the Upper Peninsula. And our goal is to connect our region's cyclists with incredible experiences all over the Northwoods and the Driftless area and around the Great Lake. And we've been doing that for 3.5 years now.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the, I guess you touched on it, but you've got various different styles you outlined there. Fat biking, of course, for those of us that live in communities where this is kind of common, like it is in Marquette, Michigan, where we're at, we kind of know what these are, but explain it a little bit, some of the differences between the bikes, and how do you get that message to all of them so people out there that maybe have never done this have an idea a little bit better?
Yeah, so those types of biking are all a little different, but they overlap a lot. And the thing that brings them all together is they're all off-road ways of biking. They're all done on unpaved trails. So bikepacking would be multi-day riding usually on gravel roads, and so biking and camping multi-day. Then there's gravel biking, which is exactly what it sounds. You're really looking for gravel roads, gravel routes, doing gravel races. And we love gravel because it takes us to more remote places. The roads are quieter. There's fewer cars. And there's just something special about the feel of riding on gravel roads. We have mountain biking on single track, and then the fat biking, which is on bikes with usually 4-inch tires or wider for riding on the snow all winter. And what I love about fat biking is I always say fat biking brings us together because during the summer, we're all different kinds of cyclists. There's road bikers, gravel bikers, mountain bikers, bike packers, people who do cyclocross, people who just ride in the city on paved trails. But in the winter, there's really only one kind of biking you can do, and that's fat biking. We all ride the same bike. We all ride the same trails. We go to the same events. And all these different types of biking all converge together on fat biking in the winter. And I think it makes it a special community, and it brings us together around these cold, wintry adventures.
That is a wonderful way to express that. I have to admit, I love to bike, but I'm a skier. So I don't fat bike. But that is really, a great way to say you're tying in and the reunion that happens around the fat biking. But you also cover races. Have you ever been to the Polar Roll in Marquette, Josh?
I have not done the Polar Roll. I have not done any of Todd's 906 adventure events. They are very popular. They're very hard. And I have not made it to any of those.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting because you're talking about all these different types of bikes, different types of adventures you can have. How well-versed are you in these different styles? And do you have a favorite style or a favorite kind of biking that you like to do?
Yeah, I do all 4 of them. And I think my own interests have really shifted even since starting the North. When I started it in the beginning of 2022, bikepacking was what I loved to do the most. I had never been to a gravel race, and the only gravel that I rode was on my annual bikepacking trips. But as I've done more of the North, I've gotten more into gravel biking. I love the races. There's some really great races all around the region. I love to do. My friends do them. Our family does them. Our family is doing a few of them this year. And now this year, I've gotten a lot more interested in mountain biking. So I still love to gravel ride, but mountain biking has gotten especially fun for me. I went to Bentonville for the first time in the spring. We just got back from our first trip to Cuyuna, and looking forward to exploring some other mountain bike areas. I'm doing my first Chequamegon Mountain Bike Fest race this year. So my own interests have evolved. I do them all. My interests change, and then in the winter, I fat bike. And my first year running the North, I didn't have a fat bike, and it was very hard covering the fat biking scene without a fat bike, and sharing all these stories and ideas about fat biking, and I did not have one. So I had a lot of kind of missing out on that community. And the next winter, I got a fat bike. And since then, it has just been a blast. I love riding in the winter. I don't want the winter to end. I want lots and lots of snow.
You got a big smile out of Frida, by the way, for saying you don't want the winter to end, because that is clearly her favorite season. You got a huge smile out of her, So
yeah.
And Josh, that's what we're kind of hearing here. At least I'm hearing is that there's a lot of passion and a lot of interest that you have in this, and it's coming across. But the fact that you're doing it with your kids and everything like that. That's really important because it carries it on. I have a question for you. It's a little kind of off script here a little bit, but I grew up in the 80s in the Copper Country, which is the Keweenaw Peninsula of Upper Michigan, up toward not quite as far as Copper Harbor, but in that area. And when we were kids, we just rode our Schwinn Traveler 10 speeds through the woods because that's how we got around when we were kids. I never really thought it would become this industry and sport and beyond a hobby that it has in all of these different levels. Why do you think it is that it has connected so well, especially, let's say, in the last 20 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I certainly think there's the desire to explore. I think biking opens up the adventurous part of us all and exploring new areas. I guess is
there something in there that about just being out in the woods on a trail or out on a road or by the shore of the lake, and you're on a non-motorized bike, you're on just a pedal bike, and you can just stop. And you don't have to turn the motor off or shut the vehicle off or shut your motorcycle down or whatever. All of those are their own things. But is it something about just being able to hear your bike in the wind while you're out there?
Yeah, I think so. It's a really great experience, and it's one of those silent sports. And you're right that it has grown. And at least from my part, what I love is getting to explore a little more, a little faster. So I've done a lot of backpacking back in high school and college. I did a lot of backpacking, went up to the Superior Trail, hiked parts of it at least, I think probably around 10 times. I've done the Boundary Waters. Our honeymoon was at the Boundary Waters. Have been up there with friends, with my wife. And I like all of those types of adventures. But what I love about biking, gravel biking, bikepacking, is you get that outdoor experience. You get that fitness and activity, but you get to do it a lot faster. So we'll go to the same areas. We'll go to the North Shore, and we'll cross paths with the lakes, with the Superior Trail. But we get to go farther. We get to go 50 miles in a day, 100 miles in a day, instead of a hard day of backpacking being maybe 10, 12, 15 miles. So for me, it's opened up that side of it, just getting to explore a little more, a little faster, a little farther.
Ooh, you are luring me in. I mean, I think I feel like there's French fries on that hook that's like getting me to say, I got to try this. But I'm going back. You said earlier, taking a step back. I'm going to reverse pedals for just a second here. Josh, I love kayaking. I love traveling by my boat. I can put a lot in my boat. I'm very comfortable. And it's a sea kayak. I have it hatched. I have my spray skirt. I have all my safety equipment. How in the world can I get started bikepacking? I mean, I'm looking at, and I do have a wonderful little tent. I love my little tent. It's a Big Agnes backpacking or bikepacking tent that would fit, I think, right there on my handlebars. It's really, really little. It's so compact. It's great. And it shoves into my hatches on my kayaks so beautifully. But really, just step me through how I would load my bike and then how I would ride it. I mean, I got to stay balanced. This is a learning curve.
Yeah, that is a real problem to solve, and something each person has to figure out when they're starting bike packing And I came, like I said, from the canoe packing and backpacking world, and some of that gear does transfer over to bike packing and some doesn't. The bike just does not have as much space as a giant backpacker, obviously, a watercraft. So it takes a lot of creativity to get it to fit, and sometimes it's just pretty expensive. There are tons of different kinds of bike bags you can strap on that carry things in a lot of unique ways. The older style was with panniers in the more traditional bike touring sense. One trip, we had 10 friends. We went up to ride around Marquette, backpacking for 4 days on part of an old crusher route. And a friend had panniers, and I'll never forget, he was riding right in front of me, hit a bump, and both panniers just sprang right off the rack sprang right to the left and the right side.
Oh,
and so it does take a different. You have to pack a little more secure because you're on bumpy, rocky, rooty trails, and it's a lot to carry. So when you start, maybe you're borrowing some packs from a friend. Maybe you're using bungee cords. I remember bungeeing everything to my bike,
Sure.
to my handlebars, underneath my seat, to the triangle in my frame on the bike, and just finding any way I could to get things to stay on, and then stopping, having to restrap them. Now that I've done it a lot, I own a lot of bike packing specific bags. I have also sewed a lot of my own bags. I got a sewing machine that was passed down to me, and I've learned to sew. So I sew some bags, but it's tricky. It takes a lot of small, light gear and bike-specific packs to make it all stay on and fit for a multi-day trip. It's a lot to carry.
Yeah, but you sound like you're pretty well versed in that, and I'm sure that with thenorth.com you have that kind of information in there, and we want to make sure people don't forget that you have this website. We are talking with Josh Rizzo here today on the Lake Superior Podcast. He's the founder of thenorth.com. He's out of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. We have a question.
Let's also spell that, because when we say thenorth.com, Josh, why did you put that X in there?
Spell it for us.
Yeah, it is NXRTH. So it's the North, but it doesn't look like the North unless you know it's the North. So it's got that weird spelling. I don't know why I named it that. I had that name even before I had the idea for the website. I thought about doing a coffee company, like an adventure coffee called The North. And then when I was sewing bike bags, I was calling those The North. And then I had the idea for the site, and I just kept the name of The North. What I like about it is that it's not just tied to a specific activity. So it's not northwoodsgravel.com, and then how do you cover fat biking and how do you cover bike packing.
Right.
It's not tied to one specific adventure, and it's not exactly tied to an area either. It's the North. It's this area we live, but it's a little general. We kind of have our own special thing up here in the Northwoods and in these North states, but we can cover, more areas as well. So it doesn't lock us in. So that's a little about the name.
Frida has put one of the hard-hitting questions here on the list, and it says to put you on the spot, and I think I'm going to do that now. And we're talking about Minnesota, Wisconsin, or the UP. Which Superior State has the best biking, Josh Rizzo?
Yeah, that's a hard-hitting question for sure. Well, in the spring each year, we do a contest, the Gravel, Dirt, and Snow Best of Biking, and we let everybody vote on a bunch of categories, from best area for gravel biking, best, a lot of things about gravel, mountain biking, fat biking, and bike packing. We don't ask that specific question, but after this year's results came in, I wrote a post to answer that question: which state is the best of biking? And I say
drum roll.
that.
Drum roll, look up.
Well, it's a couple part answer. I think Minnesota has the best gravel biking.
Oh.
They have left a lot more roads unpaved than Wisconsin. I'm not as familiar with the gravel in the Upper Peninsula, but there's a vast network of gravel roads. They have some of the best gravel biking events. I think the winner of best gravel goes to Minnesota, and I say that Wisconsin owns the crown for fat biking. When you think of the best fat bike events in our region, it's all in Wisconsin. Well, and then there's the Polar Roll, which is in a category of its own. But you have Fat Bike Berkey, you have the Snow Crown Series on the east side of the state. You have, what were the other ones? I'm blanking right now. But there were four of what are the most popular fat bike races, and those are in Wisconsin, which I think owns that crown. And then I think the Upper Peninsula is the adventure capital of cycling in our area. You have the most remote areas, the prettiest wilderness, and you have the hardest events ever up there. You have the Polar Roll, the Crusher, Margie, and I think that is the adventure capital. If you want a real adventure, the Upper Peninsula delivers it in a lot of fun ways.
Josh Rizzo there with the exactly perfect diplomatic answer to the hard-hitting questions that we have for you. But it is true. I mean, each one has their own areas, and you also talk about the different styles of biking, and that's why you have thenorth.com for people to check out. Give everybody the address and how they can find out a little bit more about what you do with that website.
Yeah, that's www.thenorth.com. The North is NXRTH, and we're on Instagram and Facebook. And then my favorite part of The North is our email list. We've got a newsletter where we share all kinds of things that are never on the website. You won't see them on social media. Just a bunch of exciting community and industry updates that I share with our followers through that newsletter.
Josh, you are now the father of 3, correct?
Yes.
And what are their ages?
They are 8, 5, and 5.
Oh my goodness! So some twins in there.
Yep, we've got some twins.
I'm now going on record that I mean, it's a couple hours for me to get up there too, but I am a Mutsi, and that's my Finlander granny name. I'm a grandma, and I'm going to really push hard. You and your family bring that beautiful bride of yours up to Copper Harbor. It's a quaint little drinking town with a biking problem. And Mutsi will sit with those babes on the edge of Lake Fanny Ho, keep them nice and cool and giggling. And you got to go, and you have got to ride those trails up there and then give a good report on thenorth.com. It is really a pleasure to know that there's someone out there really advocating for families to be together for a really good time. I got to use that twice today. Of course. Because I truly believe that when you give your children the love of cycling, it will stay with them. And it's a cradle to grave kind of activity. And boy, oh boy, the places, you're absolutely right. And you mentioned you've been to the mouth of the Huron River on your bike, haven't you?
Yeah, that was a really special place, and a place I wish we would have stayed a little longer. That was our first day bikepacking around the Upper Peninsula. We got there, and we were all just stunned what a gorgeous place it was. But we got there kind of in the evening, and then we packed up in the morning and would have loved to stay there longer.
Josh Rizzo with us here today, founder of thenorth.com. That's NXRTH.com. We'll put the link in the posting for this podcast. But appreciate you checking in with us from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Josh, it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Josh Rizzo, founder of thenorth.com. That again, NXRTH.com from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, with some great adventure comments, thoughts, ideas. And I think of all the people that listen to the podcast from around the world that don't quite know maybe what mountain biking is, or they're not familiar with gravel road biking or bikepacking. There's a lot to look at, and hopefully this gets their interest and their curiosity going.
This is so good that website is just filled with so many good ideas. And, everybody's sitting there, what can I do? What can I do? I got to go do something. Just head over to thenorth.com. Remember that X in there and get yourself out on a bike. You just can't let life pass you by without really getting a good dose of the outdoors that we live in. And it's just fantastic. I forgot to mention, I want Josh and his family to also come to Grand Island out of Munising.
So you're going to coordinate all of this, I'm sure.
I'm going to be busy.
Grandma's kicking in. I like that. That's good. That's pretty much going to do it for us this time around on the Lake Superior podcast. But remind you that you can find all of these through the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation. That's also where you can get comments to myself and to Frida about some possible topics you'd like to hear us talk about. So please be sure to look for those there. That's pretty much going to do it. I'm Walt Lindelof.
And I'm Frida Wara. Thanks for listening. The National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation, NPLSF, is the only official nonprofit 501c3 fundraising partner of the National Park Service for all 5 U.S. national park sites on Lake Superior.
To learn more about NPLSF projects and programs, you can visit the website at nplsf.org or friend them on Facebook.
I'm Frida Wara.
And I'm Walt Lindela. Thanks for listening to the Lake Superior Podcast.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from?
And by the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation. As a nonprofit, we rely on support from listeners like you. If you like what you hear, please consider a donation. To learn more and make a gift, visit us at www.gosuperior.org.